Welcome. Well, you are at home with Jim and Joy, and you are an important part of our EWTN family. And we're delighted that you've welcomed us into your home. Today, we have a really special show. We're going to take a look back at some of our special guests that we've had here on At Home this past year.
And Joy, some of the headings for our shows, just to give you a little tease: faithful priests renewing the church. Who might that be? Faithful priests renewing the church and finding their way home. A revert to the faith, wandered away, is coming back home. Somebody else that you'll know very, very well, convert to the faith, doing great work. Our candle of hope is lit. Blessed Christmas season to you. We're starting out the new year strong. We'll be right back. There's plenty more to come. Please don't go away.
Welcome back. We are at home with Jim and Joy, and we have an exciting show for you. Today we're going to do our special show. We look forward to doing this. It's our year in review. We've had some fabulous guests that we've had. Today we're going to bring to you, the caption of this one is called Faithful Priest Renewing the Church. We had the wonderful honor of having Father Peter Cameron on with us, who is the senior editor of the Magnificat, which is what we read daily.
He was. He's still a contributor.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then Father Joseph Mary Wolf, a EWTN favorite of so many, just really telling their beautiful stories.
The beautiful times. It was Father Joseph's 25th anniversary to the priesthood.
Yes.
And so much of that, all of that really has taken place here and Father Peter Cameron. So these are some of the priests that are faithful and renewing the church. In the new year, may we have many faithful priests renewing the church and renewing the world. Take a look at these clips. You'll really enjoy these sharings.
One of the problems nowadays is so many people's psychic life is sort of caught up in screens, you know? Yeah. So they're friends on Facebook, but it's a virtual kind of friendship. They're not face-to-face with people that would give them the gaze of Jesus Christ. And this is why Pope Francis is again and again calling for a culture of encounter. And this is something that was very strong in the teaching of Pope Benedict XVI, where he says being Christian is not the result of an ethical choice or a lofty idea. It's an encounter with an event, a person that leads to a new horizon and a decisive direction. And so if in evangelizing, the most important thing is the witness of the person who is offering the faith to someone. And when that person is a credible witness, and the truest sign of it is that the person is joyful and glad. Nowadays, when you meet a joyful person, you think to yourself, okay, what are the options here? They're escaped from a lunatic asylum, they're on mind-altering drugs, or they've met God. Yes. You know, because you don't meet glad and happy, joyful people. But when you meet one, you say, I want to be like him or her. You know, there's something magnetic and contagious about this person, and whatever it is making that person to be that way, I want to be that way too. And that's the key to a witness. When you meet a witness, you are also meeting the person standing behind the witness who's changing the humanity of the person in front of you. So the whole impetus of the new evangelization is trying to repropose the faith to people that maybe had something early on but then lost it, and don't find the ordinary means of, you know, whatever it is, very attractive or very appealing. So when St. John Paul II was introducing the new evangelization as a new momentum in the church, he talked about new in terms of ardor, expression, and method. So Magnificat really tries to do all of those things. So the expression is what we've already talked about. It's the beauty of the book. The method is, it's all about the liturgy. So if I really center my life around the Eucharist and everything that the liturgy has to offer, then that life that you receive in the Eucharist is going to take over my life, and it's going to generate new life in me. And that's where the ardor comes from, because again, the whole experience of just reading Magnificat makes you feel loved. It makes you want to love. It's astonishing, but it kind of works. Peers can speak to peers like nobody else can. I can try to speak to young people, to teenagers, to college age, or younger folks. They might listen, but they're not going to listen to the way that they're going to listen to these young people.
Right.
Because again, for a young person is the most credible witness. Julian in Norwich says that God loves young people when they devote their lives to Him, because this is a most precious gift. They should, if you think about it from the eyes of the world, they should be doing 1,000 other things to enjoy their youth, which is fleeting, but instead they're giving it to Jesus Christ. So when people meet them, they say, okay, again, either there's really something, you're insane, there's something radically wrong with you, or Jesus Christ is real, because this can't be faked.
Right.
One of the greatest epidemics in the country is that nobody ever asks the question, what do you really want? What are you looking for? The first thing that Jesus says in the Gospel of John, he doesn't preach. He asks the question. He says, what are you looking for?
Wow.
You tell me what you're looking for. I'm not going to start preaching to you. You tell me what you're looking for. What am I going to say? I want happiness. I want joy. I want friends. I want a sense of purpose. I want meaning. I want love. I want beauty in my life. And he's going to say, you came to the right place. Because I'm all of those things in flesh, and I want you. You know, as much as you want me, I want you, because I made your heart. You don't know it. If you could see, you know, the made in sign, and your heart had said, made in heaven by Jesus Christ. You know, so, but to have somebody really speak to their heart and say, tell me what you're suffering. Tell me what your challenge is. And I'm not going to dismiss it. I'm not going to psychologize it. I'm going to be your friend with you. And if nothing else, I'm going to cry with you. But you're never going to be alone again with this need that you have.
When you come to serve the Lord, you're opening the door to adventure, because you don't know where it's going to lead, but you know it's going to be something wonderful. And when I came here at the age of 26 to Alabama, just wanting to follow the Lord, wanting to do something for the Lord, it's like I had no idea all that would happen. You know, all the people that I would meet, the wonderful people of faith, how my own faith would be strengthened, how I'd get to meet Mother Angelica and work with her, and all the wonderful employees that are here. So.
But Father, didn't you come because you were watching EWTN and Mother Angelica made a petition, right? To
She
come
did.
for engineers or whatever? How did that go?
So I worked in engineering. I have an engineering degree, and I used to work for GE Medical Systems, fixing CAT scanners and X-ray equipment. But I just had a sense God had something for me. He wanted me to serve Him in some way. So I was unsettled, even though it was a good job and all of that, and it was doing good things. And so I thought, well, maybe if I volunteer for some Catholic organization, I can figure out what I'm supposed to do. And so I came across EWTN. I got moved to Dubuque, Iowa, and here they had this nun on TV, Mother Angelica. And she said, as you can tell, we need an engineer, because they're dropping on and off the air. So if you want to come help us, come down and help us. So I wrote to her, and they flew me down, and Matt Scalisi, who was the head of engineering at the time, he said, Mother has a sense about these things. She thinks you're supposed to be here. Wow. So she wants you to come down. And I had offered to work for nothing. But this is kind of humorous that you get Mother's business sense. So I'd offered to work for nothing for a year. And he said, but Mother's found that volunteers are too unreliable.
That's true.
So she's going to pay you a salary. It wasn't that much, but I had to come in 40 hours a week, you know.
Yeah.
So eventually, as I said, I came here to EWTN, and I worked 1 year, and then Mother got all of this new equipment that had sat in storage in California for 2 years and never been used. This man had wanted to start a Catholic TV station, but it never got off the ground. So Mother gets it for a small percentage of the original price, and it was the best equipment that money could buy. And they said, will you stay 1 more year to help install that? I said, okay, 1 more year. So then after the second year, they said, are you going to stay on? And I said, no, I'm going to go back to Iowa. My sister Diane had just had her first baby. And Mother announces she's starting this men's community that was going to be the spiritual support for the network. So the sisters are praying that I'm going to be part of it. The 12 sisters at the time.
Oh boy.
But they wouldn't tell you that, did they?
Well,
Eventually they
one day I was setting up the cameras for the live show. Mother would always come in to pray with the crew before the live show. And I'm setting up the cameras, and at that time the camera control unit was just on the other side of the wall there. So I'm setting him up, and Mother walks by, and she stops, turns toward me, and she said, "You're going to be a brother in my new community. You just don't know it yet."
Oh, how subtle. It's very subtle, yeah.
And then she went and prayed with the crew.
Wow. What was it like
Well,
for you? Was that a rush? Like,
It was like, she didn't give me a chance to answer, you know. So
wow.
it was sometime later that the Lord gave me a number of confirming signs. People said to me the same thing, that basically I was going to go home to Iowa, but that I would come back and I would be happy here. 3 different people on one day told me that exact same thing. And so I was starting to get the message, and finally, one of the engineers who worked here at the time, he said, "I had a dream about you, that you're going to go back to Iowa and you're going to come back here and you'd be happy here." And I said, "All right, it seems like this is what the Lord wants." So I called Mother and I said, "Can I talk to you?" And I said, "Mother, 12 nuns praying against one guy is unfair odds."
Right.
Well, Joy, what an encouragement. I mean, to see their faces, to hear their witness, to see faithful, happy, humble priests, and Father Peter Cameron, you know, speaking to that idea, to that truth, peers sharing with peers, and priests sharing with the adults, younger people sharing with younger people, his partnering up to some degree with Justin Fatika, so really wise, and Father Joseph Mary Wolf, of course, his story here, never having a chance with Mother Angelica and the sisters praying for him. And so we pray in this coming new year that many vocations will be raised up, that the church would be renewed in this year with all that we've gone through in the year past, that this year would be a year of fruitfulness in the church.
Yes, and it was a privilege to have them both do their little story, tell their clips about who they are, because they are holy men of God who said yes to Jesus, and they are renewing the church, and we're just delighted to have them.
There's plenty more to come. We'll be right back with further sharings and for you to watch and to see. It'll be on Finding Their Way Home. We'll be right back. Please don't go away.
Welcome back. Well, we are doing our year in review. Next guests we bring to you are Teresa Bonapartis and David Anders. And we titled this one, Finding Their Way Home. One as a revert in Teresa's beautiful story, and David Anders as a convert from the Presbyterian Church.
Teresa Bonapartis has an amazing testimony of post-abortion healing, suffering an abortion herself, and being asked to leave by her family, Catholic family, and journeying through all of that, finding mercy, grace, and forgiveness, and now blessing the church, blessing the world in post-abortion healing for women, men, siblings, days of remembrance in churches that she leads. A great, great work. And Dr. David Anders sharing about the Catholic Church Saved My Marriage, about his book. And you know, he's a great apologist for the faith and is doing a great, great work. Call to Communion is the name of
his daily radio show.
So without further ado, let's go and let's hear from Teresa and David, their wonderful testimonies and how they found their way home to the church.
When I was a teenager, I became pregnant, and I grew up in a Catholic family, Italian-American family, and when I became pregnant, I really went through a million different scenarios in my head, but I never thought that abortion would ever be anything that I would have to face because of our Catholic faith. And I really hesitated to tell my parents I was pregnant because I was afraid. And so I waited until I was at the end of my 4th month of pregnancy. At that time, this was actually in the early 70s. I'm a 60s person, and You could really hide pregnancies pretty easily because they had the peasant shirts,
Right.
kind of like they have now. Again, they're coming back in style, right? So I really hid it because I was afraid to tell my parents about my pregnancy. And I went through a million different scenarios in my head of how they would react to it, but abortion wasn't something that ever even entered my mind because of our Catholic faith. But unfortunately, when I told my father, I got a very different reaction than the one I thought I would get. He told me to get out of the house, forget that I was his daughter. He was going to forget that I was his daughter. And yeah, I could just remember being like really shocked that this was happening and leaving the house. And a friend's mother told me that I could stay there for a little while. It wasn't a permanent situation, but she told me that I could stay there for a little while. And I started fighting with the baby's father, like because of all the stress and all of that. And my father started having my sister call me to tell me that he wanted me to have an abortion. And I never wanted an abortion, and I kept saying no. And I think it's important to say here, like in all the years I've been doing this work, the 25 years that I've been doing this work, I really have not met very many people that wanted to have an abortion. Most people have an abortion not because they feel like they have a choice, but because they feel like they have no choice. Sometimes they don't realize that until they really start looking at their story, but that's what I've kind of found to be true through the years of the people that we've worked with. And that's kind of what happened to me. After my sister calling me every day, telling my father wanted me to have this, I really felt backed into a corner, and I ended up agreeing to the abortion just because, you know, I felt like I had no choice. To say that my life changed after that is an understatement. Like, the experience just changed everything. I hated myself. I couldn't believe that this had happened. And my life just really started in a downward spiral after that because, you know, like I said, I stopped going to church. I would never even dream of going to church. I thought that the walls would fall down around me. The unforgivable sin, all the things that you still hear people say all the time after an abortion experience, you know. You just can't believe that God could forgive you for something like that. And so many people start living their lives in ways that are not good because, you know, damn to hell, what's the difference? So whether it's drugs or alcohol or promiscuity or eating disorders. And when my older son was ready to make his first communion, I sent him to religious instructions, but I used to leave him off at the corner and tell him, I'll pick you up at the corner, like I wouldn't go into the church or whatever. And when he was going to make his first communion, they asked for us to go to this meeting on First Penance. And I could still remember how terrified I was to go to this meeting, but I went. And it was in the bottom with these, you know, those aluminum chairs all over the place in a big circle. And the priest came out and he started talking about the sacrament of penance. But he was really talking to us. He really wasn't talking about the kids making their first penance. And he started just listing different sins. And God could forgive alcoholism. God could forgive adultery. And he was just going down a list. And all of a sudden he said, and God could forgive abortion. And I remember just sitting in that chair and thinking, I can't believe he said that. Did he really say that? And I went home that night with probably the first hope. By then it was like 15 years, but there was a little flicker of hope in me. And what ended up happening with me is I eventually called this priest, asked if I could come in and speak to him. And it was the first time anyone heard me and the pain that I had been in all those years with the abortion. And I ended up going to him to confession. Like my kids, I always felt bad for them because I was depressed. I suffered from anxiety, all these crazy things. And for me, I was just one night really feeling attacked, put them to bed and went into the bathroom because I didn't want them to see me like that again. I just felt so bad that they had me for a mother. I felt terrible that they had me as for a mother. And I crouched on the floor of the bathroom. And over again, I just kept saying, Jesus, I trust in you. Jesus, I trust in you. And I did this, when I say hours, I'm talking hours, like 5 or 6 hours, crouched on the floor in the bathroom saying that. And at one point, I just felt this rush go through me. And I just knew that that's exactly what he did. It was almost like, it's so hard to put into words something like this, these spiritual experiences, but it was almost like I had surrendered and climbed on the cross with Christ, but instead of finding the pain, I found the love deep enough to heal the wound. And I just remember getting up and going to bed and just knowing, I just knew. And I woke up the next day and then I was on a quest to let other people know that he was ready to do this for them too. It just was something that just was innate in me, because knowing other people were out there suffering and just wanting them to know it's true. He does heal you. He can heal you.
I can't say that I was very devout. I mean, I believed it solidly the way I believed in Newtonian physics. You know, I thought there was such a thing as gravity. I thought there was such a thing as God and Jesus. But I was not a great guy. You know, I was pretty much a hedonist in high school and very narcissistic and proud and full of vice. And so God didn't mean a lot to me beyond just being the explanation for the universe. And when I got to college and saw everybody else kind of diving head first into hedonism, I thought, well, been there, done that. There must be more to life. And so I started going back to church and seeking God in prayer. You know, had a long way to go, but at least I was turning in the right direction. Right. So when I met my wife, got interested in her, and she started following me to church as well, and eventually that ended up in marriage. I think my ideas about marriage at the time were pretty much what I'd been taught as an evangelical Protestant. Some of it was good, some of it was good. For instance, my parents, my family always taught me you should never divorce your spouse. You should stay married for life.
That's a big point.
That's a big point. It's a big point, okay? My mother used to joke and say, murder maybe, divorce never,
Right.
you know.
I think Billy Graham's wife said that too.
And, you know, so that was important. They also taught me that you should save yourself for marriage, that human sexuality should be restricted, you know, within marriage. But beyond that, and that was about it. Now, that's a good foundation. Right. But what I came to realize is, look, what if I believe I'm supposed to stay married forever, and marriage feels like a living hell? Okay.
And that's what you share in the book.
What if I'm supposed to save myself for marriage, but you know, intimacy is remote because we're at each other's throats. You know, what did my Protestant faith have to offer me at that point? How could I make sense of my suffering? All right. What was the purpose of marriage? Why does it exist? All right. And what relationship does that have to my Christian vocation? If you don't have something transcendent, something that's bigger than me or bigger than you that unites us, then if we come into conflict, we have nothing greater than ourselves to appeal to. And that can be true even if we are Christian people who believe in God, because if you don't know how to relate God to the intimacy of your marriage, then acknowledging God as an intellectual reality is not going to really help negotiate that conflict. And conflict that can't be resolved devolves into contempt. And that's what happened to Jill and to me. We had conflicts because we were Christian people. We thought we knew what marriage was about. We had one pillar, a good pillar. You should never get divorced. And God be praised for that, because if we hadn't had that pillar, we wouldn't have made it. All right? But that pillar alone wasn't enough to get us where we needed to go. Pius XI wrote a great encyclical on marriage called Casti Connubii. He says, this will shock you. He says, many Catholics do not actually lay hold of the grace of the sacrament of matrimony.
Don't lay hold of it.
They don't lay hold of it. It's offered to them, but they don't lay hold of it. Pope says it's like a talent or a treasure buried in a field, because they don't know how to cooperate with grace. They don't know how to cooperate with grace.
Critical.
And you know what? The sacraments are supernatural and they're real, but they're not magic. They're not magic. The Catechism says that you could approach a sacrament in a superstitious way. What way is that? If you approach the sacraments thinking that just by showing up, they're going to work their magic on you, that's not how the sacraments work. The sacraments have to be received with faith and charity and a willingness to bear up under suffering, to endure the cross, because Jesus says if we don't take up our cross and follow Him, we can't be His disciples. That's the proper disposition for receiving a sacrament. Contrition for my sins, wanting to get rid of them, faith that Christ will make that possible, that He'll forgive me my sins, change my character. And again, now Pius XII, the different pope, says that I have to come to the Mass with an attitude disposed to seeking perfection. If I'm not there to seek my moral perfection in imitation of Christ with the help of God, then I'm not going to get what's coming to me, honestly. All right. Most people don't understand that. All right. Now, have you achieved perfection? Have I achieved perfection? I mean, maybe you guys. I'm nowhere near. Okay. But I know that that's what Jesus calls me to, and I know that the offer of grace to bring me there is available in the Catholic Church.
Just amazing, riveting testimony by Teresa Bonapartis, and what a redemption story. And David Andrews is just such an incredible gift to the church, and talk about transparency, speaking about his own marriage and the power of the church in his life. Joy, your thoughts on these and just the year?
Well, they were both such brilliant light witnesses of all the beautiful things that God has done in their lives, especially with Teresa reverting back, coming home, David's beautiful conversion story, and how the Catholic Church saved his marriage. Just brilliant witnesses for the gospel of life, marriage, and family.
Jesus Christ is calling his people home, and EWTN is a big part of that. You are an important part of this family, and you're an important part of our show, of our life here. Join us again on Friday when we revisit more of some of the favorite shows from 2018. May this year be the best year of your life. Bye now. Keep it on EWTN.